All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into a topic that's kind of all around us, but we might not always think about the complexities of it. We're talking lifting operations.
Yeah, lifting operations, you see them everywhere. Construction sites, factories, shipyards, even offshore.
It seems pretty straightforward on the surface, right? You got a crane, you pick something up, you move it, but I have a feeling there's a lot more to it.
Oh, absolutely. It's way more than meets the eye. Because when lifting operations go wrong, the consequences can be, well, pretty disastrous. We're talking equipment damage, serious injuries, even fatalities.
So let's not sugarcoat it. This stuff is important.
Sure.
So where do we even begin, I guess, with the basics? What exactly is a lifting operation?
So at its core, a lifting operation involves any activity where a load is being raised or lowered.
Yeah.
And that load, well, it can be a lot of things: materials, equipment, even personnel.
Okay, so anything that's being picked up and moved vertically. And you mentioned this load often has specific lifting points. What's that all about?
Right? A lot of times, especially with heavier or more complex loads, you'll have designated points on the object itself that are specifically designed for attaching slings or other lifting equipment. These points are engineered to handle the stresses of the lift.
So it's not just hooking onto any random part of the thing. Makes sense. So we've got the load. What else makes up a lifting operation?
Well, you've got the lifting means, which is essentially your equipment. Cranes are the obvious one, but also things like hoists, forklifts, even simple pulley systems. Then there's the rigging itself, the slings, shackles, all the bits and pieces that connect the load to the lifting equipment.
And those slings, I know there are different types, right?
Oh yeah, you've got wire rope slings, synthetic web slings, chain slings, each with their own strengths and weaknesses.
We'll definitely have to dig into those later. So we've got the load, the lifting equipment, the rigging, anything else.
The last piece of the puzzle is the lift environment. That's everything surrounding the operation, the location, the weather conditions, any potential hazards in the area.
So it's really a whole system, not just about the crane itself.
Exactly. All these elements interact, and overlooking any one of them can have serious consequences.
Now, before we get into specifics, you mentioned something earlier about pre-lift considerations. What are some of the things that absolutely have to be addressed before even thinking about starting a lift?
Well, first and foremost, you have to assess the weather. Wind, especially, is a huge factor. You might think a little breeze is nothing to worry about, but at height, wind can exert incredible force on a suspended load, creating instability.
So those pre-lift weather checks are more than just a formality.
Absolutely. Then, you've got to meticulously check for any obstructions: buildings, overhead power lines, trees, anything that could potentially interfere with the lift path.
And I imagine being aware of underground utilities is just as important.
You got it. Hitting a buried gas line or electrical cable during a lift, well, that's a recipe for disaster.
I saw something in our notes about critical lifts. What makes a lift critical?
Yeah. So a critical lift is any non-routine lifting operation where the risks are significantly elevated. It requires more detailed planning, additional safety precautions, and often involves a specialized team.
Okay, so more eyes on the situation, more careful planning. What are some examples of situations that would automatically classify a lift as critical?
Well, lifting from significant heights, that's a big one. The higher you go, the greater the potential energy, the more catastrophic a drop could be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Gravity is not your friend when things go wrong. What else?
Another one is when dynamic factors are involved. Like if you're moving the load horizontally at the same time as you're lifting it, that introduces a whole other layer of complexity. And of course, any lift where personnel could be in the vicinity of the load, that's immediately critical.
Makes sense. Protecting people is the top priority.
Yeah.
Are there any aspects of the load itself that can make a lift critical?
Absolutely. If the load has sharp edges that could damage the slings, that's a concern. Or if the weight of the load is unknown or exceeds the crane's capacity.
So always double check those weight calculations.
Precisely. And the center of gravity is super important too. If the load's center of gravity is high or unstable, that increases the risk of it tipping or rotating during the lift.
So a wonky-shaped load could be trouble.
Yeah, and if the load doesn't have designated lifting points, that adds complexity. You might need specialized rigging or lifting beams to safely secure it.
Okay, so we've talked about some scenarios. What about the environment? Can that make a lift critical?
Oh, definitely. Working in confined spaces, for example, can be very challenging. Limited headroom or swing radius can restrict your movements and increase the risk of hitting something.
Makes sense. Anything else about the environment?
Poor lighting conditions can make it difficult to accurately judge distances and clearances. And if you need taglines to control the movement of the load, well, that requires additional personnel and coordination, which can increase the complexity.
Right, so communication is crucial in those situations.
Absolutely. Clear and concise communication between the crane operator, the rigger, and the signal person is essential for any lift, but especially for critical lifts.
Now let's talk a bit about the mechanics of lifting. I'm curious about pulleys. It seems like they allow you to lift heavier things with less effort. How does that work?
Pulleys are fascinating. They basically give you a mechanical advantage. Each time you wrap the rope around a pulley, you reduce the amount of force needed to lift the load. It's a simple concept, but incredibly powerful.
I remember learning about that in physics class. It's amazing how these seemingly simple principles can be used to move such massive objects. Now, obviously, cranes are the workhorse of most lifting operations, but what keeps these giant machines from tipping over?
It all comes down to stability. The crane's base has to be wide and heavy enough to counteract the force of the load trying to pull it over. And the permissible load, that's the maximum weight the crane's allowed to lift, is always set well below the point where it would actually tip.
It's like a giant balancing act.
Exactly. And the position of the load relative to the crane's center of gravity plays a major role. The further the load is from the center of the crane, the greater the tipping moment.
I see. So it's not just about how heavy the load is, but also where it's positioned.
Right. And it's also important to remember that a crane isn't just lifting. It's also capable of moving the load horizontally. We call this slewing, and it adds another layer of complexity to stability calculations.
So the operator has to be really skilled in managing all these movements. What are some of the key instruments on a crane that help the operator maintain safety and stability?
One of the most important is the boom angle indicator. This tells the operator the angle of the boom, which directly affects the crane's lifting capacity.
So the steeper the angle, the less weight it can handle.
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
Then you've got the indicators for the boom's extension length and the load radius. The load radius is the horizontal distance from the center of the crane to the load.
Okay, so all this information helps the operator understand the forces at play. What about safety devices? Any must-haves?
One absolutely critical safety device is the limit switch, sometimes called the anti-two-block device. This prevents the hook block from being raised too high and hitting the boom tip.
So it's a fail-safe to prevent a collision.
Exactly. And while it's doing its job, the limit switch might actually slightly reduce your maximum lifting height, which is something to be aware of.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about the ground the crane is sitting on. I imagine that can affect stability too.
Oh, the ground conditions are absolutely critical. Lifting on a sleep, for example, introduces a whole new set of challenges. The crane's stability is compromised because the force of gravity is no longer acting directly downwards.
So a level surface is best.
Always. And you always want to check the crane's manual for the maximum allowable slope. If there's no specific guidance, it's best to err on the side of caution and avoid lifting on an incline altogether.
Good advice. Is there anything else we need to know about the effects of lifting on the crane itself?
One thing to be aware of is boom deflection. When a crane lifts a heavy load, the boom will bend slightly. That's normal. It's designed to absorb some of the forces. But if the boom bends excessively, or if the deflection becomes permanent, that could be a sign of overloading.
So regular inspections are key to make sure everything's in good working order.
Absolutely. Okay, now let's dive into slings. They're the unsung heroes of lifting operations, literally holding everything together. What are some of the golden rules for using them safely?
Yeah, let's talk sling safety.
Okay, first and foremost, never, ever use a damaged sling. Any signs of wear and tear, cuts, fraying, deformation, it's out of service. And don't ever try to shorten a sling by tying knots in it. That weakens it significantly.
Makes sense. What about kinking?
Kinking is a big no-no too. It puts uneven stress on the sling and can lead to premature failure. And speaking of stress, never exceed the sling's safe working load. That's the maximum weight it's designed to handle.
So knowing your sling's SWL is critical.
Absolutely. It's usually marked on a tag attached to the sling, but you should always double-check against the manufacturer's specifications. And another crucial rule, no one, and I mean no one, should ever stand under a suspended load or put their hands between the sling and the load.
That seems like common sense, but it's good to emphasize it.
You'd be surprised. Safety complacency can be a real problem. Now let's get into the different types of slings. We've got webbing slings, wire rope slings, and chain slings. Each has its pros and cons.
Let's start with webbing slings. What do we need to know about those?
Webbing slings are typically made of synthetic fibers like nylon or polyester. They're strong, flexible, and relatively lightweight. which makes them popular for a lot of applications. But they're also susceptible to damage from abrasion, heat, and certain chemicals, so you got to be mindful of the environment they're being used in.
Right, so always inspect them carefully before use. How do you determine the safe working load of a webbing sling?
It should be clearly marked on the sling's identification tag. But you can also sometimes tell by the color of the sling, the width of the webbing, or the number of black lines woven into it. But that tag is your primary source of information.
So keep those tags in good condition.
Absolutely. And it's a good practice to keep a record of all your lifting equipment, including the inspection dates and any maintenance performed. That way you have a history of each sling's usage and condition.
Smart. Now let's talk about wire rope slings. Those seem pretty heavy duty.
They are. Wire rope slings are made from multiple strands of steel wire twisted together. They're incredibly strong and durable, able to handle very heavy loads, and they're also resistant to heat and abrasion, which makes them good for industrial applications.
But they're not indestructible, right?
Nothing is. Wire rope slings can be damaged by kinking, crushing, or excessive wear. And they need to be inspected regularly for broken wires, corrosion, or any other signs of deterioration.
So what are the telltale signs that a wire rope sling is ready for retirement?
There are a few key things to look for. One is a reduction in diameter. If the rope's diameter has decreased by more than 1/3 of its original size, it's time to replace it.
Okay, 1/3 reduction. Got it. What else?
Another red flag is excessive stretch. Wire rope will stretch a bit under load. But if it's stretched more than 15 centimeters per 30 meters of length for a 6-strand rope, or 25 centimeters for an 8-strand rope, it's a sign that it's reached the end of its safe working life.
So measure that stretch. Anything else?
Yeah. You also want to be on the lookout for broken wires. If you see 3 or more broken wires in one strand, or 6 or more broken wires in one lay, that rope is compromised.
3 and 6. Got it.
Another thing to watch for is kinking. If the rope has a sharp bend or loop in it, it's weakened at that point and should be removed from service.
Okay, kinking is bad news. Anything else?
Yeah, there's something called bird caging. This is where the strands of the wire rope start to separate and splay outwards. It looks kind of like a bird's cage, hence the name. Bird caging is a sign of serious damage and means the rope is no longer safe to use.
Bird caging, noted. So plenty of things to look for when inspecting a wire rope sling. Now, what about chain slings? When are those used?
Chain slings are a good choice for lifting heavy, awkward-shaped loads, or for applications where heat is a factor. They're very strong and can withstand high temperatures.
So forges and foundries.
Exactly. But chain slings can be susceptible to sudden failure if they're subjected to shock loading or if any part of the chain is damaged. So it's crucial to inspect them carefully before each use.
And what are the key things to look for when inspecting a chain sling?
Well, like with wire rope, you want to check for any reduction in diameter. You can do this by measuring the chain at its wear points and comparing it to a chart provided by the manufacturer.
So each chain has its own wear and tear profile.
Right. And you also want to measure the length of the chain before and after use to see if it's elongated. Elongation is a sign of wear and could indicate that the chain is nearing the end of its life.
Okay, so chain length, chain diameter, anything else?
The other important thing is to visually inspect each link in the chain for cracks, gouges, or any other signs of damage. If you see any damage, the chain needs to be removed from service immediately.
Got it. No compromises on chain safety. Now, we've talked about inspecting slings for damage, but are there any general rules for how to use slings properly?
Yeah, there are a few key things to keep in mind. When using a basket hitch, for example, you always want to make sure the load is balanced in the sling. An unbalanced load can put uneven stress on the sling and increase the risk of failure.
Balanced load. Check. What else?
If you're lifting a load with sharp edges, you always want to use padding to protect the sling from abrasion or cuts. You can use things like leather pads, wood blocks, or even old tires, as long as they're sturdy and won't slip.
Makes sense. Protect those slings. Anything else?
And this is super important. Never try to drag a load with a sling. Slings are designed for vertical lifting, not horizontal dragging. Dragging can damage the sling and create an unsafe situation.
Okay, no sling dragging. Got it. Now, this might seem obvious, but it's worth reiterating. What's the absolute most important thing to remember about sling safety?
Without a doubt, the #1 rule is to never exceed the sling's safe working load. That number is there for a reason. It's based on careful engineering and testing, and exceeding it puts everyone at risk.
So know your limits, respect the limits, and operate within those limits.
Exactly.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more aspect of sling safety: Sling angles. Why is the angle of the sling so important?
Sling angles are crucial because they directly affect the amount of stress placed on the sling. The smaller the angle between the sling legs and the vertical, the greater the stress on the sling.
So a steeper angle is better.
Generally speaking, yes. Safer angles are typically 45 degrees or greater. As the angle gets smaller, the forces on the sling multiply rapidly. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to lift a heavy weight with a rope. If you hold the rope straight up, it's much easier than if you hold it at a shallow angle.
Right, that makes sense. So how do you determine the sling angle in a real-world lifting operation?
It's a bit of trigonometry, but basically you can figure out the sling angle based on the length of the sling legs and the distance between the lifting points on the load. And there are handy charts and calculators available to help with this.
So a little bit of math goes a long way in ensuring a safe lift.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been an incredibly informative deep dive into the world of lifting operations. It's clear that there's a lot more to it than just hooking something up to a crane and lifting it. There's a science to it, a set of best practices, and a whole lot of responsibility involved.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Lifting operations are inherently risky, but with proper planning, training, and attention to detail, those risks can be managed effectively.
So with all these elements in play, the machinery, the rigging, the load, the environment, what would you say is the single most underestimated factor in ensuring a safe and successful lift? Something our listeners should really ponder.
That's a good question. I'd say it's the human factor. Communication, situational awareness, following procedures, not taking shortcuts, those are the things that can make or break a lift.
So it all comes back to the people involved.
At the end of the day, yes, technology and engineering can only take us so far. It's the human element, our judgment, our actions, our commitment to safety that truly determines the outcome of a lifting operation.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for listening and stay safe out there.